There's this wa and ga thing that seems...
Okay, so you want to know the difference in wa and ga?
Today's
your lucky day.
All
it's
right.
not that hard at all, okay?
Really?
I'm gonna break it down for you. It's the simplest thing ever. Everybody overcomplicates this. You know what? Every standard Japanese teacher out there does it wrong. They say wa equals subject. Bullshit, it equals subject. That's not what it equals. If you try to no. And if you try to understand it that way, you're gonna get f***ed up.
Oh,
That's why the world thinks that Japanese is ass hard to learn. That's not the way it is at all.
You might be wondering what this character is. It's wa, and it's one of the most important characters in Japanese. Wa means colon, or the English phrase as for. In other words, it introduces the topic. It answers the question, hey, what are we even talking about? Here are some examples. Keiko is a Japanese person. Keiko wa Nihonjin desu. At this point, you might want to pause this video and look at the by the way note I've put at the bottom of the page. Keiko is a Japanese girl's name, and it means blessed child. Nihon is Japan, and Jin is human being. So let's just say, for example, I said Keiko wa and didn't say anything more. A Japanese person would understand that to mean, hey listener, we're talking about Keiko. Of course, the most natural question that comes from that is, yeah, what about her? To which you would answer the most natural response, Nihonjin desu. In other words, she, Keiko, is a Japanese person. That's right, in Japanese, you just say, is a Japanese person. So, please note, the most natural way to say Keiko is Japanese is not Keiko wa Nihonjin desu, but rather simply Nihonjin desu. Because in Japanese, if it's obvious we're talking about Keiko from context, we don't need to say the Keiko wa part. Now, if the other person says, what are you talking about? What was the topic again? Then you would need to say the full version. Keiko wa Nihonjin desu. Okay, now I have to draw your attention to something really important. Wa does not mean grammatical subject. I know this is probably different from what 99% of other Japanese teachers may have told you in the past, but they're wrong. I can tell you straight up, they are wrong. The subject is not wa. Sometimes the topic and the subject can happen to overlap, but those are cases of coincidence, and I'll cover that in a future video.
That's it. It's that easy. That's what wa means. All right? It just means we are talking about
something.
That's it.
Oh, well, if wa's that easy, what about ga?
What about ga? Ga is a totally different, just don't even think of them as competing ideas, all right? That's the problem with most Japanese learners. They think, watashi wa, watashi ga. Oh, if you didn't know what watashi is, watashi means me or I, okay? They'll take their first Japanese lesson and then they'll hear watashi wa, watashi ga, and they'll get them confused, especially because they kind of sound like each other too. That doesn't help. I want you today to think of watashi wa and watashi ga as two unconnected things.
Oh,
okay? We already learned about watashi wa. Now put that away. We're going to learn about watashi ga. And watashi ga is super easy. Take a look down here.
All right.
Ga equals pointy finger. That's it.
Pointy finger.
Pointy finger. When you want to point something out, you say ga.
Now that you know what wa is, let's move on to ga. Here it is. This is ga. This is also one of the most important characters in the Japanese language. Ga has a number of different roles, but the main role of the particle ga is to act as pointy finger. Let me explain. Ga's job is to point out who, or what, is the one who blah blah blah. Now I'm gonna get you to remember for a second that Japanese girl named Keiko, whom you met in the wa section of this video. Little did you know that she's a big fan of hamburgers. Unfortunately for Keiko, her little sister Masako also loves hamburgers. So Keiko's gonna find out that the hamburger she's been looking forward to all day long is suddenly missing. Let's listen in on their exchange.
誰が私のハンバーガー取った？私が。
Okay, let's take a good look at these examples on paper. Keiko says, "Who's the one who took my hamburger?" You'll notice that she's actually asking for somebody to point out the culprit. Yes, I fully recognize that this is wordy, and in more fluent English, this of course will be more like, "Who took my hamburger?" I just gave you the full version so that you could see everything that's going on. Here's the Japlish version. Who ga mi no hamburger o took? And for those of you who are wondering what that last blue symbol means, the one that has a little W-O over it, that indicates the direct object of the sentence. Now I know that's kind of grammatical and a pain in the butt, so I will do a future video where I explain exactly what that is. But for now, I'm hoping you get it from context. And for those of you unfamiliar with Japlish, it's a mixture of Japanese and English that I use as training wheels for new students. I find that if I mix it up like this, it's easier for people to see the structure of Japanese. And finally, here we go with the real Japanese sentence. Dare ga watashi no hamburger o totta? You might want to pause this video at this point to get a really good look at all the moving parts here. Go ahead, I'll wait. By the way, here are what the pieces mean. Dare is who. Watashi is I or me. And totta is took, the past tense of take. And here's your second by the way information. This is a review from my previous video, but the biggest rule in all of Japanese grammar is that the verb must come at the end. Again, you'll remember I said in a previous video, there's no conjugation in Japanese, so the task is 7 times easier than a Western language. Just remember to put the verb at the end. Okay, now that Keiko has asked, "Dare ga watashi no hamburger totta?" Who took my hamburger? There's got to be a response. The long English answer would be, "I am the one who took your hamburger." Of course, yes, I know that in fluent English, the responder would just say, "I did," to the question, "Who took my hamburger?" Again, I'm putting this into the long version so you can see the moving parts. Here we go with the Japlish. I ga. I'm pointing the finger directly at myself, and that's why I'm saying I ga. And in full Japanese underneath, watashi ga. You'll notice this is not a full sentence. The full sentence would be, watashi ga hamburger o totta. But this is Japanese. You can cut out lots of it. And I'll include a note right at the bottom. It's obvious, but in Japanese, much of the message is implied by context.
Let's just say Dave and I, this hypothetical Dave and I, are playing in the sandbox, and he finds a brick in the sand and hits me in the head with it. I'm gonna go home and scream to Mom, "Dave ga! Dave ga! Dave ga!" That's all it means. And little kids who are like 2 years old learn how to do that in Japan.
Oh, do they?
That means I am pointing at Dave, I am pointing at Dave, I am pointing at Dave.
The particle wa's meaning will become even clearer when put into a question. Okay, folks, so here we have poor Keiko. She's starving because Masako stole her hamburger, and Dave is also starving because he used up all his energy throwing bricks at my head. So the two of them decide to go to a restaurant. And at the restaurant, Keiko says to Dave,
私はラーメンを食べる。デーブは?
Keiko is saying, "As for me, I eat ramen. 私はラーメンを食べる。I はラーメンを eat." And when she says, "Dave は?" she's literally saying, "What about Dave?" You absolutely could not use Dave ga in this context. So let's imagine a context where you could. Let's say they're in the middle of their meal and some confusion arises as to who's going to pay for it all. Keiko would turn to Dave and say this.
誰が払う? 私が? デーブが?
Clearly, when Keiko asks, 私が? she's asking, am I the one who's going to pay? And when she asks, デーブが? she's asking, is Dave the one who's gonna pay? I hope this clears up the confusion between wa and ga. Generally speaking, they apply to different contexts. For situations where the listener wants you to state the topic, use wa. Keiko wa Nihonjin desu, which means, as for Keiko, she is a Japanese person. For situations where the listener wants you to point out something, use ga. Keiko ga Nihonjin desu. Keiko is the one who is a Japanese person. Remember, the most natural way to say Keiko is a Japanese person is simply Nihonjin desu. No wa, no ga, no nothing. Only if the listener needs more information will you select wa or ga. Otherwise, just leave that shit alone. Hey folks, this is Mochi. Mochi wants you to subscribe. Mochi also wants you to watch one of these videos. Please, do the right thing. Make Mochi happy and hit the subscribe button and watch these videos.